Writing a song is an interesting process. The more I learned about music theory and mixing, the more I learned that songwriting is not as easy as it seems. So today I'm going to walk you guys through the process of writing a song and how I arrive at the end product, and then I'll end up playing what I created at the very end. Let's go ahead and get started. So right after I open a new project, the first thing I want to do is pick out a few instruments to use. Generally, I'll pick out instruments based off of the songs I had been listening to recently, as they often will inspire me to get up and write a song in the first place. Before working on this project, I had been listening to a lot of Gorillaz, Jack Stauber, Portishead, and other songs that sort of fit into the alternative genre. I was inspired a lot by the song Andromeda by Gorillaz to create something that was a bit more slow-paced, chill, and spacey. Because I chose to work with a more spacey tone, I decided that I would mostly work with synths. I chose a range of different types of synthesizers, everything from leads to pads. And then I opened up the MIDI editor, which is an editor in which you can draw out the notes that you would like to hear and then play it back and adjust as needed. It's helpful if you do not have the right instrument you're looking for. You can just find the right MIDI and then plug it in and play it. I added a lot of chords in the pads because the pads are there to create an ambient sound that's sort of in the background. So chords that progress slowly often work very well with pads. I chose to go for some faster paced melodies on the leads because they help keep the song going with a strong melody. After I had finished working with the synths, I created the MIDI for the drum loop, the bass, and I also added in a guitar for effect. Although guitar would normally go against the spacey genre that I'm going for, I heavily distorted the guitar and I also made it pitch down halfway through the note, which sort of made it sound more like an effect than just a guitar placed on top of some futuristic spacey music. Now that the MIDIs were complete, it was time to move on to the composition. Composition is deciding what MIDIs go where. You wouldn't want all of the MIDIs playing at once the entire time, as the song would have no depth to it and it would sound boring because it would be the same few notes playing the entire time. For the intro, I decided to only have the pads in and then have part of the drum beat, only the cymbals and snares, to come in to kind of lead you into the song. It has a very calm start, which will contrast the chorus, where the chorus is almost all of the MIDIs playing at the same time, to really add more impact to that part of the song. Now that we've finished with composition, we're now going to move on to mixing. When I was mixing this, the first thing I did was add in a compressor for each track. Compressors find different moments in the song and they will turn up the quiet bits and bring down the loud bits. So the volume all of a sudden starts to sound the same throughout, even if it has a more quiet feel to it. It won't be almost inaudible when you're listening to it, only to have it become very loud later on. You can still hear how loud or quiet it is, but it just isn't actually loud or quiet. Another thing that I added onto every single track was an EQ. An EQ, or equalizer, brings up different wavelengths, and it can also bring down other wavelengths. For example, with a bass, I'll want to bring up the lower frequencies and bring down the higher frequencies, as the higher frequencies will often be unwanted, as we really want a booming, loud bass. The final effect that I'll add to every single instrument is a Roomworks. A Roomworks will provide reverb or echo to each track, and it makes everything feel like it was really recorded in a studio rather than plugged in a bunch of MIDIs. It can help make instruments sound more authentic, especially if you use an appropriate echo. Once I had finished mixing, I added on a compressor and a brick wall limiter to the master track, or the combined track of what the end product will be. The vintage compressor that I used was just to ensure that all of the instruments were not too loud and not too quiet and just working nicely together. I made sure to crank it up to the point where it was nearly peaking, because it's better to have the track a bit too loud than a bit too quiet, especially for the next step, the brick wall limiter. The brick wall limiter essentially makes it to where the audio won't exceed a certain number. This is done to ensure that the audio won't peak, as it's regulating how loud the volume can be. I set it to 0.3, which is just above 0 where the audio ought to be, so that way it catches everything. And now we're done. I went ahead and made a short version of the song just so we could get a nice preview of what we made.